Hey everybody, it's Rajesh here.
And Tane here.
Welcome to our podcast, Baskets of Knowledge, Chats with a Difference. In our podcast, we invite guests from around the country and around the world to talk about how they got to where they're at the moment. It's about a journey, it's about an experience, it's about their life. Kia ora koutou, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Baskets of Knowledge. We're recording this on a pretty auspicious occasion for those of you that are Irish or pretend to be Irish or want to be Irish. It is the 17th of March, which for some people is a day when they bring out the Irish heritage, even though they've never been Irish, but that's cool. So happy St. Patrick's to those of you that celebrate that. And if you don't celebrate that, that's okay. Happy Sunday, happy Monday, happy whatever day it is, because every day is a fantastic day to celebrate. Tane, what have you put into your basket since we last spoke?
Yeah, I think something I've learned probably from yesterday, I managed to go along and play seniors rugby, which was good to get out there, get amongst it. But I guess something I learned was, I kind of went in last minute with no expectation about playing and then suddenly played a full game. But I think, from being able to score a couple of tries and actually get in there and get amongst it, I think I learned that, sometimes you don't need to have all this big preparation or huge mindset around, I need to do this, and this. And, you don't have to make everything such a big occasion or something that has to be prepared for. Some things you can just go into. And obviously I've been doing preparation around gym work and stuff like that. I haven't just gone in, after a year off or whatever. But I think that there's definitely a time and place where you can actually go, look, I just want to have some fun. And, there doesn't have to be this whole, pre-game ritual that I need to do to get in there and get amongst it. I can just go out there and have some fun.
I'm glad you added the fact that you have still been fit and healthy, because I would hate for people to go out there and go start playing rugby having done no fitness, because they're like, hey, Tony said. I was like, no. I think what you're trying to say essentially is that, hey, sometimes we overcomplicate things and we overthink things, and when opportunities arise, we let that stop us. If you had overthought that, you would have not taken part. You would have just been like, nah, I'm not going to do this here. So, and that's very true. That can be extended to all aspects of life. Be prepared. Expect the unexpected and be prepared. As they say, you never know what could pop up, and they could be playing a rugby game. They could be changing a car tire. It could be first aid. It could be anything, right? So you're just being prepared, and those skills are always good to have. Or it could just be to say some poetry, some slam poetry. All cool. I love that because it's quite funny, because as you're speaking about preparedness, yesterday, out of the blue, I got a message from my old school saying, hey, Prajesh, we're having our 70th anniversary. We'd love for you to jump on and give a bit of a chat. And I was like taken aback. And as I said to you just before we started recording, I was taken aback because at school, I was not a prefect. I was not a top sports person. I was not a top scholar. I was none of those things that you think I would be. So it is quite humbling to be invited to go on and have a chat. And it was pretty cool jumping on. And it gave me time to reflect and think about, actually what school has done for me. I'm growing up in Zimbabwe and going to school there. In the midst of it all, I was like, what am I doing here? This is crazy. It was, the discipline was crazy. The compulsory, it's very different in New Zealand, very, very different in New Zealand. And we still had the joys of corporal punishment there. We had the cane, we had all this fun stuff here. Fun. And it was really interesting listening to the old boys yesterday and them reflecting back and seeing one of my old geography teachers is still there. I was like, wow, this is pretty crazy. And hearing him speak about some stuff let me reflect back on how the stuff that I did in school that I didn't enjoy at the time have actually put me in good stead where I'm in the future right now. Things like at school, we had to have our socks always up. We had to have our collars certain ways, we had to have our hair a certain way, tie a certain way. At the time, I was like, oh, this is pretty crazy. But no, actually, it's not about that. It's just about the discipline of doing that every single day. So yeah, that was a pretty cool, awesome experience for me, and expect the unexpected, and that was pretty cool for me. But hey, for our regular listeners, that Tanya and myself can keep bantering on forever and ever, but you're not here to hear us. You're here to hear our guests, and as always, we try and scour the country and scour the world for people that we think we're amazing. And as always, as we say, we think everyone is amazing, and we'd love to have more people on here. Just fund us, somebody. Just fund us. It would be all good. Today's guest has been someone that has been recommended by some of our other guests, which is pretty cool. And I've been looking at their work and what they've been doing. They've done some pretty cool things both in the community and in their study as well. Welcome to our podcast, Teja.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here. Really appreciate it.
Fantastic. Beauty, Teja. So for our listeners who know nothing about you, do you want to tell them who you are and what are you doing at this moment in time?
Yeah, sure thing. So I'm Teja. I'm just a 22-year-old. Just finished my Bachelor of Pharmacy at the end of last year in 2023. And in 2024, I've started working as an intern pharmacist at a community pharmacy in Lower Hutt, the Life Pharmacy Queensgate, and just sort of yeah, finding my footing after finishing university and just seeing what needs to be done in the world. Yeah.
How crazy, you go from 4 years of basically being told what to do essentially to now, oh, damn, I am being told what to do, but not really. What does that big transition feel like for you?
Yeah, it was actually pretty crazy. I mean, even coming from I feel like there's been multiple stages of it because I mean, coming from high school, it's very sort of assisted by the teachers and the staff and everything. Everyone's sort of, out there to support you and things like that. And then obviously moving to Dunedin, so I studied at University of Otago, away from family for the first time in my life. And I had a few friends that I knew, but in my first year in my residential hall, there wasn't that many people that I actually knew, maybe one or two people that I'd met before, but it was very sort of new experience for me. And kind of learning how to study in that environment was a bit challenging for sure, but I think it's just a process that everyone goes through when they go through uni. And it's kind of a similar stage at the moment as well, after finishing uni. Starting to coming to work is definitely a big change in terms of things that need to be done and the way that I'm studying as well, because I do have still some study to do, but as well as just kind of lifestyle factors as well, just kind of factoring in how my day-to-day runs is a lot different from how uni would normally run for me.
I love the way you put that there because we talk about transitions in life, and you mentioned those three very distinct transitions in your life so far. I mean, there's probably lots more there, but transition from high school to university, from university to work as well. Nobody teaches you those things here. Those are things that you learn a little bit of from, I guess, from your peers, but then you put into it and you go, right, cool, I've now got to make this work for me, which is always you either sink or you swim, and even when you're sinking, you're actually learning how to swim at the same time. Isn't that crazy? Because you go, right, well, I've got to give it my best shot. But let's step back to Teja at year 13. You had a choice. You were in year 13. You went to St. Pat's Silver Stream in town in Wellington, sorry, not town. Oh, that's how dare I say that there.
Yeah.
That was a disaster, right? And you have at the end of your year 13, you have a choice of pursuing some sort of study. How did you decide that pharmacy was something that you wanted to do, or did that come a bit later on?
Personally, pharmacy did come in later on. So, in high school, I was always interested in the sciences a lot. I really found that quite fascinating. I would say I was all right in terms of the other subjects as well. I did enjoy some of the other sort of commerce subjects as well, but I always found with the sciences, I was always really interested in learning more and kind of seeing how that could be applied in sort of the modern world as well. So I decided to take that into the next step in terms of university, and then I decided to do health sciences first year in university because I thought that was the next sort of natural progression from doing sciences quite well in high school. So I decided to step forward with that, and yeah, and then I just went through health sciences, and throughout the year, I think it was towards the end of health sciences first year for me where I kind of realized that the sort of subjects that would lead into pharmacy, so the biochemistry and chemistry type subjects, were ones that I found really interesting, as well as things like hubs and things like that, so the human body systems. So those kind of subjects that I found really interesting, and I thought they would lead quite well into the pharmacy sort of career. So I was quite intrigued with that.
Oh, great. And it's really awesome that you have the open mind. Lots of people don't have an open mind. I was just talking to somebody just before who told me that they enjoy physics and maths, and automatically they thought that to be an engineer. And I was like, hey, it doesn't work like that. But, just keep your mind open because you have lots of options, and you don't know what you don't until you actually try different things, whatever those different things are. And
Exactly.
Given that you lived in Wellington to do the health sciences, you had a choice of going up to the University of Auckland, which is a great university, and going down south, which is the total opposite as well. It's still a great university, and you were right smack bang in the middle of the country, essentially. How did you choose the university you wanted to go to, and how did your family react? You know, as you said at the start, this is the first time that you were going to be away from home for a long time.
Yeah, so for me, I guess it was for me, I was debating it quite heavily, like which one to go for. Because obviously, you know, they are quite different in terms of Dunedin and Auckland, very different sort of culture, very different sort of kind of lifestyle, and also just the general city as well. I had a cousin that at the time went to Otago, so I'd always like heard about Otago from him, and he would give me, because he knew that I was interested in the sciences as well, and he was a science student as well, so he would kind of give me a rundown of what like I could expect from the Otago sort of side, just kind of the lifestyle of Otago, as well as how the study would go, how the courses run, and things like that. In terms of Auckland, I was also very debating Auckland as well, because one thing from Auckland that I found quite interesting was optometry. So optometry is only offered in the University of Auckland. So that was one thing that I was considering, and kind of swayed me towards Auckland a little bit. But I think ultimately I decided to go for Otago just because I knew quite a few people who went to Otago a couple of years older than me. They always said that they had like a good time there, and also it's always really helpful when you have someone there that you know who can kind of guide you through that initial stage. So I think that's why I decided to go for Otago. And yeah, so that was my thought process at the time. And in terms of how my family reacted, I think they were fine with either one. I had a few family members who thought that Auckland would be a good call, and a few that thought that Otago was also very good because it offered things like dentistry and pharmacy as well. So ultimately, I think I decided to go with Otago, and yeah, so from then on, it just kind of went that way.
That's really cool because, you know, you had to weigh out all the opportunities and options. You know, as you said before, the University of Auckland offered the optometry pathway.
Yeah.
Otago offered um, people that you know, and another option maybe dentistry. But it came down to, hey, I've had learned experience and lived experience from somebody that you trusted. I think that's important because, you know, when you're making those decisions, there's no right or wrong decision that you're making. There's just a decision that you make at some point, and then you choose your gut. Because I'm sure, Teja, your parents and your family would have had an opinion. Your friends would have an opinion. You would have all these opinions in your mind. You'd have the media with opinions, and then you go, right, cool, all these crazy opinions. I've got to make the decision. And you know, that's any story in life, right? We have all these crazy opinions, and not that you've got to make the choice that's right for you at that particular point in time. And when you made that choice to leave home, what is it like for you being away from home and now being thrust into a place that is so full of diverse culture? It is very, very different to where you come from in a homestead. And when I say diverse culture, I don't just mean ethnic culture and religious culture, but also just a whole different student culture, which is different to high school.
Yeah, so it was definitely a bit of a kind of it did put me at surprise a little bit, because you always hear things, you know, you're always like because university is always, like I would say, like a bit of a melting pot. Everyone comes from all over the country, and you get all these different sort of perspectives, but I feel like you don't really properly realize it until you get to uni, and then you kind of realize, wow, how many sort of interactions you have with different people, different backgrounds and everything. And it is quite amazing. And also weirdly at the same time as well, you do realize how small a country like New Zealand is. You always meet someone and somehow there's a connection through them, and that's always I always find that really fascinating. I mean, even to this day, how, you know, how many people there are in New Zealand, all over the country, they come to university, but for some reason you can always there's always sort of a common mutual connection with nearly every person you meet. So I think that's really cool. And I think largely that does build from being at uni as well, meeting all these different people. Suddenly you have like connections across the whole country as well. So yeah, so it was definitely quite interesting at the start as well. Especially for me, I would say, because I went to primary and secondary school in Upper Hutt. So primary I went to St. Joseph's School, and secondary I went to St. Patrick's College, Silverstream. And throughout those years, I had the same very close group of friends. So we all went from primary to secondary as well, and so those connections real stayed. And even to this day, like we still keep in touch, and we still get together once in a while, and it's really cool. And then, you know, when you're with that close knit group of a friendship, and then being thrust away again from Wellington all the way to Dunedin, so you don't see them as often, but it kind of makes you kind of step outwards, step out of your comfort zone and your shell, and kind of make friends with new people that you'd never, you know, previously might not have spoken to as much. But I think that's a really good thing, you know, kind of opens up those connections, and you kind of gain new perspectives about, you know, life and your journey and their journeys as well, and just kind of forces you to think about things in a different way.
Yeah, that's very true. You know, I like the way you said that, because universities across the world are basically melting pots. There's people from all around the world and all around the country all descend into one place to essentially try and educate themselves in whatever that education looks like. And you know, the beauty about New Zealand is that, as you say, it's such a small country. Whichever of the 8 universities you go to, and there's a melting pot of people from all over the place, that there's going to be some crazy connection that you go, whoa, you know this person, and you know this person, and you're like, what the hell? This is pretty crazy. It's wild. It's pretty wild. And then as you go further up, those connections actually become your friends, and life is pretty crazy, which is pretty cool. And what is if we're going to go to the biggest shock factor, whether it's good or bad shock factor, when you first moved away from home, what is your biggest, like, oh, whoa, this is pretty crazy?
Oh, yeah, that's a pretty good question. I'm not too sure. I guess there were multiple things. So one thing I guess I would say might be that my family is relatively conservative. So
Yeah.
one thing might potentially be maybe the drinking culture was didn't come across as like a bad shock or anything, because I had heard about it and things like that. But it is different sort of seeing it in real life. But it's just one of those things that you kind of as it just normally happens with it's just a common way to like meet new people as well. And I think it's a really cool thing in Dunedin. You know, if you go out on a Saturday night with your friends, you end up meeting a whole new group of people that you'd never been exposed to before. So I guess that's one thing that was a little bit surprising for me. And then also, I guess another sort of shock might have been how well you have to manage your own time in terms of study. Because I mean, again, if you bringing it back to like secondary school, you know, you have classes throughout the day. Everything's, you know, from like 9 to like 3:30 or whatever. Everything's sort of done in a specific time. You do a little bit of homework when you get home if you need to, and then you kind of just go back the next day. Whereas in terms of uni, like the amount of content in the lectures is quite a lot, and also trying to manage that time with meeting new people, especially when you're you know, move somewhere else. It's just kind of like a something you have to juggle. So in terms of like time management, that really kind of forced me to kind of confront myself about how I'm managing my own time, and if I could be managing it better.
Yeah, and that's so true, because you know, time management is something that we always talk about, but until you actually thrust into it, it's a whole different ball game. And time management, this is something that you are navigating at the moment as you navigate the next stage of your life.
Yeah, for sure. I think definitely like taking on this new job that's early mornings, trying to figure out how I fit that into the wider spectrum of my days, but also, yeah, just trying to find, I guess, with my commitments too, especially with coaching, because a lot of them end up clashing or being quite closely aligned. So trying to figure out how I can, yeah, maximize the effort I want to put in, but also, you know, I want to be involved with everything, but ultimately you can't be involved with everything, or not at you know, a high coaching capacity. You know, sure, I can go and support the girls or go and support the game for the greater good, but I think, yeah, it's learning when to put your head in the ring and say, yeah, I really want to do this at a full capacity, and other times where you want to step back and just go, hey, I want to support the cause, but I can't do much because of my other my other commitments, which I think is something I learned through my university journey.
That's pretty crazy, because you know, anyone thinks about time management just being a thing you've got to do at university, but it's actually a life skill. And
Mm.
Teja, I'm sure you're feeling this as well. As you're now doing your internship, you go, right, cool, I've got to do my work, but I've also got to study. I've got to navigate that there, because it's not just a, hey, at university, this has got to figure this out. It's actually, hey, a life skill that you've got to bring into all aspects of life.
Yeah,
Try.
exactly, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically exactly like you said, with the university, I think you get used to how you're sort of I guess learning how to time manage is really important. But once you start getting there, and that can come throughout first or second year, sometimes it does take some time. You kind of get used to it, how you manage your own time. But then when you finish uni, it's a weird sort of step back and a step forward in terms of you go back to having a big chunk of your day taken up by work. So you got like 9 to 5 at work, and now suddenly you have this other half the day where you kind of have to fit everything else in. And that can be sometimes a little bit hard, because I was actually talking with one of my friends today about that's something that I'm still kind of getting used to, is in uni. You kind of have the freedom to decide when you want to do something. Like if you want to study, you kind of decide, oh, hey, I'll study from like 9 to 11 this morning, and then again at like 5 to 7 tonight. And you have that freedom to choose because you have the day, if you don't have any lectures, and you can kind of plan around that. Whereas with work, it's just kind of like something that I'm still kind of learning to do myself, just kind of arrange my day or manage my day and my activities around work, just because it takes up a large chunk of time, and just kind of learning to put everything on my plate without making it too full and overwhelming myself as well.
Yeah, it's just like I like to say to people, don't rush to grow up and start working, because when you start working, everything just changes for you quite dramatically. Where you have a lot of choice, but you also don't have a lot of choice. It's quite a crazy paradox that you have when you. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's something that we all have to do. So enjoy whatever you're doing right now, and because when you start working, things change quite dramatically. Even if you are an entrepreneur making lots of money, you still have to navigate that whole time management thing, which is pretty interesting. You mentioned before that you come from a conservative family, which is really cool and really interesting. So when you say conservative, was that because your family is religious or the faith based? Did they come to New Zealand as, as immigrants, or where does it come from? And I ask this question because I too came from, my family is pretty conservative, and it comes from culture and tradition. And when I moved to university for the first time, I was pretty blown away because I was raised in a very conservative household. So when I went to university, I was like, "Whoa!" Nobody told me. So actually, people told me about this, but my parents didn't. They shielded me from it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I would say so. That's a similar thing with me. So in terms of my parents, yeah, so they did move to New Zealand roughly when I was around 3, 4 years old. So it is around 2004. So that is quite a few years away now. But then they moved, yeah, in terms of their late 20s, they moved in their mid to late 20s. And then also, I guess, so that kind of plays a part in it. Being brought up. So my parents are from India, so being brought up in sort of that sort of environment, getting used to the values, beliefs, and traditions there, and then coming to New Zealand. And then so they, from a young age as well, they kind of really encouraged me to stay in connection with my roots from India. It's important to, get used to the life here in New Zealand and learn how things work, as in a new way of life. But they really, encouraged and supported me to stay connected to my roots in India. So they would do that through teaching me my native language. So that's Telugu, which I can speak now as well. So they always encourage conversing in Telugu at home, as well as watching, movies from India and things like that, and shows and things like that. Which always helps, it builds you kind of get a lens into the world that it's there. You pick up the language, you pick up the culture and things like that. Because you can do the parents really do that here as well. Living in an Indian household here is really good. They really encouraged me. So yeah, exactly. So they encouraged me to stay in touch with the roots as well. And then also taught me lots about what life was like growing up for them and things like that.
And I think there's lots of parallels to that in all indigenous cultures. I have that where I navigate a crazy world of Indian culture by going in Africa, a bit of Africa as well there, especially because I didn't grow up in India. I have no physical attachment to India at all, yet I am attached to India, which is pretty crazy. And if we talk about the Māori world as well, we have a lot of Māori, like Pacifica, that have no attachment to their world, not because of their own fault, but just because of the way the world is. But again, the whānau, the family are the gateways into their world. And Tana, you've been experiencing this as well, haven't you?
Yeah, and it's something that I've had to navigate, and I guess try and find what it meant to me. And I think growing up, I think it's almost a paradox, because there is this assumption that, because I identify as being Māori, it means that I should know, what that means. But I think, like anyone, it takes a certain level of understanding and knowing. And, just because you physically present a certain way doesn't mean that there's varying levels of what your story looks like and how you relate to your culture. But I think that's something that, as time has progressed, and probably over the last decade or so, it's definitely become a stronger story point that people should reconnect with their roots and understand where it is they come from before they before you just on your journey where you're going, so where you are going. But I definitely think at the time it was a big challenge to try and figure out what that meant for me, for sure.
Yeah, so true, and like you said, Teja, you had your family were there to go, hey, this is you're in New Zealand, you're in a new country, but just remember where your roots are. And for some people, they might not have that familial encouragement, but that doesn't mean you don't have to stop at that point. You can find it in a different way. And have you been to India, Teja? Have you been to India?
Yeah, I have. It's been quite a few years. I think it's coming up on 6, 7 years since I've been now. We were meant to go at the end of 2020, but I think just because
what happened? What happened in COVID 2020? Nothing
Oh, I
happened.
don't know.
Nothing,
Something happened. Something just disrupted all the plans. I don't know. I can't quite remember.
Geez,
But
bloody 2020, yeah.
yeah, I know. So it's been quite a few years, but I actually have been a few times. I think the first time I properly went back was in 2008 when I was 7 or 8 years old. And it's a little bit foggy. It's quite a long time back, so I can't remember that visit too well. But I think the last time I went back would have been the 2016. So I remember that visit quite well, and I remember it quite fondly as well, because we do have my dad's brothers are in India as well, so we visit them. And then we also stay with my mum's side as well, who live in another city. So it's kind of good, kind of going back and forth between the two sides of the family, and we get to spend time with each of them as well. Because my dad's side stays in quite an urban city, and then my mum's side stay in more of like a peaceful sort of village area. So it's really kind of cool to see the two sides of India like that, and it's really I always had really good fun on those visits. You get to connect with the family back in India as well as just kind of take some time to explore and just kind of reconnect, as you'd say.
Yeah, it's a crazy place. India is a crazy place. I always tell people it's such a paradox of craziness. As you said before, you have the urban sprawl, which is an urban sprawl. If people think Auckland is bad, forget about Auckland. Auckland is nothing.
Oh yeah,
urban sprawl, and then you have the villages, which are crazy remote as well. It's such a crazy place. So if you have not been to anywhere in India or Southeast Asia, it's a crazy sensory explosions, like call it. All your senses are just destroyed.
definitely.
Or opened. Destroyed is probably the wrong word. I was gonna go open. A challenge. Your senses are challenged is the word I'm gonna use. Yeah. We always like a challenge, don't we? Talking about challenges, Teja. You get into pharmacy school and you spend the next 3 years studying pharmacy school. What are some of the challenges that as you look back now, you go, actually, there was a challenge and we overcame it. But what was it like for you going through that time? Because obviously you've gone through the health first year hurdle, you get into your program, and now there's an expectation that you're going to be all good.
Yeah, so I think that is sort of like an expectation. It's quite common, I think, for a lot of students as well. Once you get, I think they go through that health science first year really stressed, really onto it, kind of trying to get the best marks as possible. And then I think there is sometimes that assumption that can come through that once you pass that hurdle, it'll be all right. But I think particularly for health science programs, which is what I can speak to personally from my experience, I think it is that for me, what I found was that when I stepped into second year of pharmacy school, I actually personally started enjoying the content a lot more. And I think that was partially because there was that pressure of getting the highest grades possible removed from me. It was more about, okay, what am I actually learning right now? How is this applying to my future? And so while there were sort of challenges, I think it is still quite hard to get, because my goal was still to get good marks. So there was challenging moments where, you know, some of the content was quite difficult, quite a lot of things that I needed to look over. But what I personally found was that I was enjoying the content more, because I think that was mostly because I think I was taking actually the time to appreciate what was being taught to me instead of focusing solely on the end. I think I was focusing on more of the journey, as you would say, and focusing on what I was actually learning and how that would, you know, how that I could apply that in my future, and kind of seeing how that would, you know, affect my life, basically the learning that I was picking up. So I think that was one thing that I found really quite good. And I think I didn't realize it until maybe halfway through my second year, and I was like, oh, I'm actually really enjoying what's being taught to me now, even though there are moments where the content is quite hard, and I am, you know, might be struggling a little bit or just taking a lot of time to understand. I think it's just I was overall quite enjoying the content itself because I was more appreciative of the actual knowledge that I was gaining.
Which is a fantastic metaphor, as you said before. You know, too many times we're chasing the end, and we forget to enjoy what we're actually doing at the present. I mean, it's pretty cheesy in everyone's little time. You know, enjoy the journey, not the destination. Blah, blah. But it's true. You know, it's cheesy because it's true. You know, and unfortunately, in some programs of study and some things that we do in life, the boundary or the permutations that are set around us don't allow us to do that there, because the way to be successful, you have to look for the destination and not think about the journey. And it's easy for people to say that there, but when you're in that particular moment there, you go, if I don't get that destination, my journey is going to change just a little bit and not what I planned. So yeah, it's a great analogy and a metaphor for life, really. One thing though that one of your peers said to me and asked me to ask you is, throughout university, you know, university throws crazy challenges. It's always up and down, and there's a bit of a roller coaster. One of your peers said to me, hey, can you ask Teja, how is it that you always have a positive attitude in life, no matter what comes up? And this is from your peers. They have noticed this about you, and they said, what is it about you that allows you to have that amazing positive attitude?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not too sure I know myself, to be honest. But I guess one thing that I can say is I think it's completely normal to have, you know, days where you don't feel good, or, you know, times where that things are really tough. And I think that's normal, and I think that's just a part of life. And again, as cheesy as it sounds, I think just kind of accepting that it's all right to have these kind of days or lulls is what kind of helps you to move forward as well. And I personally had that, like I've had periods where I've just, you know, struggled, or you know, I found that this particular assignment is really hard, or I didn't do particularly well on this test that I didn't like, or things like that. So I've had those kind of lulls as well, and I think everyone does, but I think it's just kind of realizing that it's, you know, not the end of the world. I think that life goes on, and I think also one of the things is that life won't stop for you as well. I think life just keeps going. So I think it's best to just kind of, it's much easier said than done, again, like to take it on the chin and kind of keep going. It's much easier said than done, but I think that's just one way I guess I kind of look at it. And also, I think one thing in Dunedin that I really looked forward to was the support that I had from my friends. Had really good friendships that I really treasure to this day, as well as my family as well, even though they were, you know, back home in Wellington. Basically, most days I would have like a little bit of a video chat with them, even if the video chat was 5 minutes long. It could have been an hour long, just talking about random stuff. But I think that's one of the part of my days that I really enjoyed. Sometimes my mum or my dad would call me just on video chat, and we would just talk for a bit. but they could see that I was trying to study or trying to get something done. But they would just kind of slowly do their own thing. And one thing that I found really helpful was just knowing that their presence was there. And even though they weren't physically there with me, just knowing that they had their support for me always showed, and they were always being supportive, even from a distance. And I think that's one thing that kind of has really helped me out, and kind of every day after I finish that video chat with them, usually at nighttime the next day, I become a little bit refreshed. So I suppose that's one thing that's really helped me out for sure.
It's important because, we think that we can do life by ourselves. I know we are born by ourselves and die by ourselves. That's cool, but in between, support is there for you, for you to reach out and support, whether it comes from, in the frame of friends, colleagues, your family. We all have different relationships with different kinds of people, but always reaching out and being able to go, hey, I have a support person, or I have a support structure. Or it doesn't have to be when things are down and bad. It can just be all the time, because when things are going good, your support is still there. And when things are going bad, your support is definitely there. So that's really, really beautiful. And talking about support as well, one thing that I know that you got really involved in was, you're proud of your heritage, you're proud of where you come from. You got involved of the Indian Student Association. Let's talk about that then. How because as you navigate, everyone says, oh, university is so full on, but actually university is not that full on when you start enjoying different things. And how did you enjoy being part of the ISA?
Yeah, it was actually really enjoyable for me. I think one of the greatest things about the ISA was just meeting the different people. I think just the range of people that you meet, and I think just developing those new friendships, and also being able to connect with them on more of a surface level, as well as more of a deeper level, as connect because a lot of these students that are in the ISA are from sort of similar sort of background. If their parents have potentially immigrated to New Zealand, and they're, first generations, just, trying to find their footing in, sort of Western world, but also connecting back to their roots. And I think that's one thing that the ISA was really good, and it kind of provided a really valuable place for everyone to meet up and also have these chats, but also have fun and just connect over sort of, even if there were small things like, oh, hey, did you watch the latest Bollywood movie? Or how'd you think about that movie? Or what did you think about this song? It's just a really great place. And so I think I really enjoyed all those meetings that I had with the ISA. And as well as the cultural night itself, I think it was really cool to be involved in such a large scale thing, because I think one thing is, the first year that I properly did ISA, I was involved in one dance, and it was really fun. And at the start you think, oh, it's just one dance, it's very small, but then when you see it slowly come together with all these other dances, all these other layers, and generate into like such a large scale show, and seeing everyone enjoy it, I think it's it's an amazing thing for sure.
Yeah, it's pretty. It's quite an experience. I was involved in that when I first went to university in South Africa. And here's a crazy story. When I moved to New Zealand, there was no ISA at the University of Otago, and I was like, "What is going on here? We should start one." And yeah, that's what happened. A long, long time ago. It was pretty tiny, and it all started a long, long time ago, which is pretty crazy. But the reason I asked that is because it's your cultural connection that as you said before, there's so many things that could connect us, but sometimes our culture and our stories are the only things that other people cannot understand. And the same thing, I guess, when you go to Tirupati, when you go to the Maori Center, there's a story, there's a narrative that I will never understand, and Teja will never understand, because that is a world that you live in, and that's all cool. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just you finding your people.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're right, touching on, there's so many different things that can connect us too. I think sometimes you go into these, you reconnect with these associations and stuff in terms of finding your culture, but sometimes you don't realize that there's so many different layers or so many different aspects to your culture that you can connect with other people in your culture with. It's not always the generic or the standard ones that we often hear about, or is more generalized. But yeah, you're right, there's so many different aspects that you can connect over, and I think that's the cool thing with the associations, is it provides that safe space to be able to learn some of these other aspects that might that you often might not hear about. But yeah, it's a cool aspect to bring in for sure.
Yeah, and talking about cool things to bring in. Let's talk about your dance, Teja. Have you always been a dancer, or was it something that you picked up when you came to university?
Oh no, definitely never been a dancer before. Never even thought I would do something like that. But I think I saw some videos on YouTube and things like that before, and I was like, I mean, it seems like a lot of fun. And so I think it was really helpful as well. The first sort of set of choreos that I had, both of them were really helpful, and they both really helped me out. And they were really well done in terms of breaking the moves down into simple steps that people could follow and people could do. But yeah, definitely never thought of myself as a dancer before that. But I guess it's just something I picked up for fun along the way.
Yeah, here we go. You can find Teja's TikTok channel on. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Or maybe I'm not. I don't know. Awesome.
Coming out soon.
Exactly. Yeah. No, really beautiful. That's really cool. And now, we've spoken about university. We had a lot of chats about university. Let's talk about the working world. What has it been like for you now as you take book learning? Book learning. And there's some practical stuff as well when you're doing the stuff. But now you're going into the world where you are now basically a patient will come to see you or your preceptor, and you'll be like, okay, cool. How does that feel like?
Yeah, it is something definitely it's quite kind of sort of confronting, but also kind of really encouraging as well. One thing I would say is an example is over the holidays, past 2 summers, I've worked at a pharmacy as well. And that's basically what that's done is I've just worked there, and every day is basically new there. When you're working over the summer, you kind of just go up, show up, and then just kind of help out in any way that you can, and then you come back home and the next day is all refreshed. And that's sort of similar with university in terms of starting every day new and learning things along the way. But one thing that I have noticed in terms of actually beginning to work properly full time is especially because I think still have things to learn. I still have assignments and things like that as an intern pharmacist. One thing is that I've noticed is every day is sort of its own day, but also a continuation of a sort of long journey. So if I pick something up and if I learn something new today, it's just I've just had to have the awareness that I need to kind of retain this knowledge that I've gained, and I need to be able to apply it tomorrow. So that's one thing that I've just kind of sort of still getting used to. The idea that whatever I need to pick, whatever knowledge that I pick up, whatever scenario that I come across, I need to be able to kind of reflect on it on that day, or not even that day, maybe that week, and then kind of next time I go into work, being able to apply the knowledge that I've gained, the experience that I've gained into a new sort of scenario. And that's something that I think that it's good that the sort of pharmacy intern program really allows you to do. These sort of monthly assignments that we have allow you to sort of reflect on the experiences that we have throughout that month, what we could have done better, what we did well, and kind of being able to apply that into the next month's sort of area of learning and also time at work as well.
Yeah, that's so true, because when you're at university, you seem to compartmentalize everything, but in the real world, you have to remember those. You can still compartmentalize, but you also have to remember, especially in the health sector. Actually, I'll rephrase that, not the health sector, anything to do with people, in the people sector, whether it's coaching, whether it's health, whether it's hospitality, whatever. When you remember something about people, the next day it just makes your life so much easier, and it just not just your life, but the whole experience becomes much much nicer, which is crazy, because at university we don't do that there. Well, you do, but you don't. If that makes sense. Yeah, and you know, talking about um, working, talking about being at university, and talking about all the different changes you've had in your life. One thing that a lot of people speak about is they didn't realize how homesick they would get when they disappear for the first time. And I bring this up because I always say that this is going to sound very stereotypical, but a lot of females are just straight up say they're homesick. But when it comes to males, it doesn't happen, especially with Southeast Asian males. People don't say stuff because it's Southeast Asian culture is really interesting. What is it like for you as a young person?
In terms of being away from home during uni.
Or yeah, just the first time, the first time you jumped on a plane and were like, see your parents, I'm out of here. Or the first time your parents left you.
Yeah, I think it definitely was tough. And I think you try your best to kind of like you know, kind of ignore that feeling and try and keep on going. But I remember the first time, because my parents initially came with me to Dunedin to, you know, help drop off all my luggage and say goodbye. But I remember that the first time that they came, and then I saw them sort of leave. It was a bit hard because I think there was that realization that, you know, I've basically seen these to my parents every day since I was born, right? And then now suddenly it's going to be effectively a couple of years or even a couple of months, if you think about it, in the first year before I see them again in person. So I think that's one thing that I did find. It was definitely challenging, and I think the halls are really quite good because it kind of gives you that sort of there's that setup of you continuously meeting a whole new people, and that kind of sort of really helps you in terms of the social aspect of it, to not just studying all the time but also meeting new people and kind of keeping that sort of social battery going and being able to create new relationships, which is really good. But definitely, you know, in terms of when things were sometimes a bit hard, or sometimes I would definitely for sure get some homesick a little bit. Sometimes I would say even in Dunedin, you know, when it's when the winter months hit and it gets really cold, you're kind of, you know, missing home, missing the home cooked food, and you're missing, you know, being warm in your bed. So definitely that, you know, I think that's a common feeling for everyone for sure.
Yeah, you're missing the Wellington wind. Like, oh, give me the Wellington
Yeah,
wind.
the winds, yeah.
I need that. I need that. Funny. Sorry, I kept on smiling there because for some crazy reason Zoom keeps on doing thumbs up signs, and I don't know what's
Yeah, the
going on.
yeah, I did notice that. Not sure why.
I was like, this is pretty funny. It's pretty cool. And it's the most inappropriate times when it pops up. It's like saying something really deep and insightful, and the thumbs up comes up. Technology, hey, AI is listening to us. Is there any other parts that I haven't touched on that you would like to share, Teja, that in your experience so far that you think would be useful for our listeners to hear about?
Oh, I guess one sort of thing is yeah, I guess I already touched on it in terms of time management is quite a thing that you do need to kind of maintain. And also I think one thing that I would say, if you're sort of a new student going to uni, one thing that I did find that I'm still kind of developing is your own style of study. That's one thing that I think that a lot of people can sometimes struggle with, in terms of when you go to high school, you have a particular way of studying. You know that works well for you, but I think it's just kind of realizing that if it works well for you in uni as well, that's completely fine. But if you're noticing that, you know, it is quite difficult, or you're maybe not retaining some of the knowledge, I think just maybe trying different ways to study is quite good as well. Kind of developing your method of study and seeing what you can do about that is something that's really valuable, because I think the way that you study is a continuous process. It's not that you're ever going to come up and have one way to study that you're going to nail everything. I think different situations force you to learn things in different ways. And I think that's just something important to realize. And it's fine if if you're having periods where you think that, oh, I could be doing better. Because I think it's a common feeling to go through. But I think what's important is that you kind of find ways to go ahead with that, as well as you know, using the support around you to kind of help you push through those tough situations, because a lot of them will come. And I think that's just life in general, you know, not just university, just life in general. But it's just knowing where you can touch base, and where you can see who you can rely on, as well as what support you can gather from your surroundings, your friends, family, and other relationships as well. And it's really important to kind of keep in touch with those sort of relationships and draw on them when you need to, but also kind of help others when you need to as well.
It's important to acknowledge and recognize those changes there, because things are going to change and you can't keep doing the same thing. You know, even if you think you're doing the same thing, you're actually not doing the same thing. You're changing, even if it's one little bit. That's prompting me with a great question. Change. You talk about change of study, but what about change of identity? You know, because you're in Wellington, you're at St. Pat's, Silverstream, you have your identity. You know, you've done all your things at St. Pat's. You are in the school magazine. You're doing your thing there. Go to university, and nobody knows anything about you. What is that like?
Yeah, it is quite quite a change as well. It does kind of let you kind of um you become a bit of a blank slate, I suppose. And what you do with that is up to you. I suppose sometimes it's possible that some people have friendship groups that are quite different to what their high school friendship groups would be. And that can just happen in terms of just when you meet different people and you interact with different people in different ways. But it is quite interesting. And I think every person sort of does sort of manage that situation in their own way. For me, I found that that sudden sort of change of identity wasn't too bad for me. I think I found one thing that I will say, I think I did sort of being away from family and being away in sort of a different environment, I did probably become more in touch with my roots as well as in my my tradition and things like that. It's obviously very hard when you're far away from home and you know there's no one sort of encouraging you to stay in touch with those sort of traditions and things like that. But one thing that I did find was that there was a period where I probably wasn't doing it as much, but then I think I started to realize that you know, these values were important to me, these sort of customs and traditions were important to me, and that's one thing that I probably became more attuned to the more that I as the years went by during university itself.
And that's so true, you know, because I think about myself, and Tana, you might be able to um, agree or not with this here. You know, I found that when you're living at home, it's always there. You just take it for granted, and then you actually get frustrated by it, like, why are we doing this here? What is the purpose of this here? You know, just because you're a young person and you're like, oh, this is a bit silly, especially with, you know, lots of customs and traditions. You're like, what the hell? This makes no sense. And then
Yeah.
as you get away from it, you actually start realizing, well, wait a minute, there's a bit of a deeper meaning than just being made to do something because you have to do it, and you change it to what I want to do because you now start understanding it. So yeah, you know, so it's really quite crazy. You know, you have a personnel identity, and you also have a cultural identity, which shifts and changes as we grow. So yeah, that's really pertinent right there. Tani, any questions for Teja, Tani?
I guess something we haven't touched on is, I guess, you know, like what you've done outside of study. I think we've touched on study and we've touched on, you know, your association with the Indian Association. But I guess you know, outside of that, was there any other hobbies or that you took up, you know, during your time in Dunedin?
Yeah, I think in terms of one thing that I did sort of take up, mostly it was study and just hanging out with friends, the ISA as well. One thing I did do last year that was quite new to me was being a sub warden. That was one thing that was very new for me. Initially in 2023, when I applied, it was kind of just because a lot of my flatmates were leaving. And so I thought, oh, I see that applications are open. Let's give it a go. I think it would be a good sort of experience for me. And so I ended up applying, and then I got the job. And so that was probably one thing that really sort of was a great learning experience for me, as well as a really good time that I had last year as a sub warden for sure.
Where were you subordinate, Teja? Where?
I was subwardening at Studham last year.
It's not awesome. Yeah, I thought so. So, what is it like? Okay, I love that bit there because, you know, I love the way you said it. It was great. We've all been subordinates. Um,
Yeah.
what did that teach you about humans, though? What did being a subordinate teach you about humans?
I guess one thing that it
And
taught
this
me,
this this could be both good and bad. It doesn't actually matter. There's no
yeah,
there's
no,
humans are crazy.
yeah. I guess one thing that it taught me was really in terms of, I think when you're at uni, it is quite a fast-paced life. You know, you're always constantly going from one lecture to the next, one assignment to the next, hanging out with friends, and you can sometimes be in your own bubble as you know, even though university is as diverse as it is. But I think one thing that it really did teach me was it kind of just kind of gave me a new appreciation of everyone having their own story and having their own background. Because I think when you are a sub warden and you know you talk to these all these you know brilliant students and brilliant people,
Not
and they
not
have
all
their
so
own.
not all brilliant. Though. Some of them are scallywags. Let's be honest. Some of them are pretty cheeky.
No, it was great. It was great. But like, you know, when you're talking to all these, you know, people and they have their own sort of, you know, backgrounds as well as their own sort of life experiences as well. And you learn a lot about them as well. And I think that gives you a real appreciation for the people around you. And you kind of gain that kind of understanding that everyone does have their own story. They do come from their own backgrounds. They have their own values, their own real experiences. And I think that's one thing that you really pick up as a subwarden when you're having a deep conversation with a student, or even if you're just having a casual chat, in the corridor, in the hallway, about what they're doing for that day. And you kind of get a glimpse into their life, and you kind of get that appreciation for what you have as well as what they have, in terms of what you can learn from each other.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty privileged position to have when you do it for the right reasons. And I know, Tane, you have your thoughts about that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think you get what you give in terms of that role. But I totally agree about the life story too. And I think, I probably looking at that cohort that I was a subordinate for compared to my own experience in first year, I think that was the greatest privilege was, finishing up the year knowing that I knew every one of the students in, different capacities, but I still knew quite a bit about their lives. And I also, I got to see so many different lifestyles that I might never, come across elsewhere, because obviously when you go into a hall as a first year, you find your peers and you pretty much stick to them. You might associate with other people, on a night out or on a college-wide event, but outside of that, you really stick to the people that you're comfortable with. Whereas I think with the subordinate, you have that challenge of trying to navigate so that you can be approachable for all the students, regardless of what their background is. And in doing so, you actually, I guess, widen your horizon as to what's out there, what stories are out there, and what experiences people have gone through to to get to where they are today. So I think it's a really, as Patricia said, a really privileged position. Obviously not always hunky-dory. There's always challenges amongst any role you have. It's the same as my sports coaching at the moment. But, I think, it's one of those amazing roles that if you are in it for the right reasons, you really enjoy it, and you really, you get just as much out of it as, the time that you give in that role.
Yeah, that's so true. I was being cheeky there when I was talking about scalawags, because, we're going to have cheeky people. We're going to have people that are going to test the boundaries. We're going to have that, but it's still a privilege to be involved in there. And, I like how you said people are brilliant, and people can be brilliant at being cheeky. People can be brilliant at being a scalawag, right? That's awesome. They're brilliant in whatever. Brilliant doesn't have to be in an academic way or a sporting way. It can be just brilliant at being a crazy, annoying person. I'm just kidding. There's no one out there.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's totally true. I mean, it doesn't have to be purely brilliant, in academics. It can be brilliant in, just the way that they, approach life. I had a couple of the student residents last year. Whenever I'd see them, they just have a massive smile on their face, no matter what the day was like, and no matter what they had on their plate, there would always be a smile on their face. And a couple of them, were interested in these, really amazing. They had these really amazing talents that they were always willing to, help other people with. And I think that's, brilliant in that way. So it's not just purely, as you said, not just purely academical, but just in the way that they live their life, for sure.
Yeah,
And it could also be cheeky as well, definitely. Yeah.
Let's be real. There's some pretty cheeky people out there, but you have to take it, and you give as good as you get, which is fun. Makes the job fun. Teja, we've been speaking for over an hour now. Time flies when you're having fun. Well, I hope you're having fun.
Yeah.
We have one last question on the podcast, and we ask this to every one of our guests. As you know, our podcast is called Baskets of Knowledge. We would love for you to share a piece of knowledge to put into our basket that both Tane, myself, and our listeners can look into at some point. And this can be from any of your experiences that you've had so far.
Okay, yep. So just one piece of knowledge. I guess one thing that I would say is, I think just reiterating what I was saying before, being able to know who you can rely on, having that support, being able to count on your family, maintain that connections with your friends and your surroundings. This can be your inner circle of relationships as well as your outer circle. So I think really being able to connect and knowing who you can rely on, as well as it's really important to help out those in need. So these can be, trivial problems that your friends or family might have, as well as deeper potentially problems, because I think everything is interlinked in a way that if you help, I truly believe that when you put help out into the universe, you'll receive help back when you need it. So I think really being able to maintain the relationships that you build is really important, no matter the distance. I mean, we live in a modern world now. It's really good to be able to continue maintaining those relationships, as well as always being able to ask for help when you need it, is what I guess one thing that I'm trying to say. Because if you have that good sort of circle, you'll always get the support. And I'm sure you'll always reciprocate as well.
Yeah, that's really powerful. I think it's important for us all, no matter what, whether you're at university or an adult, whatever, to make sure you have your support structures, whatever they look like. They could be your close family, they could be your close friends. But I think what's important that you mentioned there, it's very easy for a lot of us to make relationships, but then we don't maintain them and don't look after them. So, like a plant, you have to nurture them for them to be prosperous and to be useful, what a weird word, for them to be enjoyed, otherwise they just wither away and die, and then everyone loses out. As you said, everything is interlinked. So that's a really beautiful piece of knowledge to put into our kite. Teja, thank you so much for jumping on. Tana, any last questions before we wrap up?
No, all good. It's been a really good, another good episode.
Beautiful, Teja.
I just appreciate it so much.
No worries. Any questions for us, Teja? Sorry, we're just doing all the talking. Any questions for us?
Oh no, I think that's all good. I think it's one thing I'd like to say. I think you guys are doing a really cool sort of activity here in terms of the amount of people that you guys interview, and also getting those baskets of knowledge, as you say, and things to add into your basket. It's really powerful, and great job on you guys for doing that.
Oh, thank you. This doesn't happen without you. So if we don't have any guests, this doesn't happen. So thank you for jumping on. Teja, thank you for jumping on to Basket of Knowledge. I learned a lot about you today as a young person. I learned a lot about your values, your systems, and I'm sure there's lots of things that our listeners out there will take away and learn as well. And to our listeners out there, thank you for jumping on. Thank you for those of you that have always supported us. For those of you that are first-time listeners, please jump on, like, comment, subscribe. We really need you to grow this podcast here. But the most important thing for us is to make sure that as you go on to your next, whatever you're doing in life next, is to make sure that you have a smile on your face and keep putting something into your basket of knowledge. Until next time, ka kite, bye everybody, and enjoy St. Patrick's Day. Bye. Be safe.
Thank you for listening to Baskets of Knowledge.
Yeah, we hope that you found something useful to put into your basket of knowledge. And as we said before, remember to put something little into your baskets of knowledge every week. And as always, feel free to like, comment, and share this podcast. Thanks, everybody. Bye.